non-Zoom oriented.
That's right. Okay, so we are recording. Okay, 6:01.
It's time.
And we've got 6:01. All right, so let's go ahead and call this meeting to order of the Master Planning Task Force. Today, April 25th, and hybrid meeting. So let's go ahead and take a attendance. Lindsay Smith, chair, present.
David Frack, co-chair.
Maynard Southern.
Brad Rich.
Eric Russell.
Those joining us virtually.
Ashley Wood.
Staff.
Go ahead, Brandy.
Brandy Saxton here. I would say that I think your video from the room is frozen.
Really?
Yes. Either that or Eric is sitting extremely still.
Let's
see.
Can we plug it, unplug? Oh, you did something there.
Reboot.
Yeah, I just put it on to me. See if that works. There
There you
we
go.
go.
There it is.
All right, cool. Rob Taylor, staff.
Great. All right. And so going over the agenda, does anybody have anything to add or switch around?
Nope.
We should add the minutes of
Yeah.
March, whatever it was, 28th.
We need to do the whole motion thing.
Not to add it to the agenda.
Okay. I guess I should catch up on what I need to do. All right, great. Anything else to add or move to on the agenda for tonight? Look good to everyone? Not hearing anything else. Let's move along. All right, review and approval of the meeting minutes. Let's start with March 28th. And
Long one.
it was a long one, way back when.
Ton of information.
Yeah, so this is when we were going over the focus groups.
Yeah.
And recapping what we had learned from each of the focus groups, so,
I went through it. I have little teeny changes, but not worth mentioning.
okay. Anybody, yeah, little teeny changes, or grammatical ones are important, but we can email those. But if you have substantial, yes,
I have a
substantive,
line 167. Is it a building map or a build out map? And I throw that question to Brandy. And you probably don't have the minutes, do you?
It's build out.
yeah, fill that.
Okay. And then, top of page 6, line roughly 204 to 208, I'm not sure that I understand what is being said. If the rest of you can make sense of it, that's fine.
Yeah, I was like, there's a baby in the room, there is a baby in the room.
So why don't you read what it is that you're trying to understand?
That's probably a good idea. It is a much finer analysis involved to understand the steps for services. They are not straight line of increase. Cost of community service studies. I don't know what cost of community service. Maybe it's cost of, not sure. Not necessarily reflect the cost of community development and taxes because of this. That's basically where I get confused.
Okay,
Yes, on line 205, the no should be do.
Yeah.
Do not.
and it reflects back to page, it reflects off of, so that's a build up of, lines 202 and 203.
Yep.
So we were talking about how there's a perception that, anytime housing is built, if we add houses, the cost of services increase with each house, and it's not a straight line. It's not actually, and so what this is saying is that it's and Brandy said it's a finer analysis. Brandy, is it cost of community service studies? Is that the correct?
That is the term, cost of
That's the
community
term.
services. And I think maybe the way to describe it is the service costs increase in a step fashion. They're not an equal amount for every house. Things are good, then there's a certain number of houses you need a new level of service, and it steps up.
So
I guess
On line 204, we could change it to understanding the step increases in cost for services.
step increases cost for services.
Or something along those lines, making it sound.
Yeah.
So is 205 second word COSTIVE or COST new word OF?
Brandy, it's costive, right? Is the
No, of OF, cost
Cost
of
Cost
community
of.
services.
okay, there we go. So cost of community service studies.
That makes a lot more sense.
Okay. Because that's what we were talking about. It's not like one for one, like one fire truck can cover. I'm making it a hypothetical, 50 houses. So if you add, or, so if you have 39 and you add one house, you're not adding one fire truck per house. It's that kind of thing. So, but there tends to be, or that the cost of living is going to continue to increase if we increase housing.
Okay, line 419 on page 11.
Okay.
The sentence says, Co-Chair Smith said she feels it is important to let community members know there is a change for people to chime in.
Chance.
That should be chance, should it not?
Yes.
And out of 13 pages of minutes, that's all I've got,
All right.
and none on the next.
Okay.
We should just recognize that Whitney's joined us.
Yes.
Okay,
She's taking notes probably as we speak.
Hi, I am here. A
I heard the baby.
little cranky right
show
now.
us the baby.
And it's like Bridget has just joined as well.
And it looks like, okay, so we'll take a moment. We are, if the task force members who have joined us, oh, look at that little thing, online can please, state your name. We'll go in alphabetical order, A, B. B's.
Celia Fierro.
Okay, C's. Now B's.
I'm Bridget Labrie.
Great. And we see Whitney, who's not alone in the room. We'll just make note of that.
Whitney Banker plus small guest.
For a right to
I love
know.
it. Enfield's newest citizen. Yes.
Excellent. All right, any other I don't know the words, I can't say it. Changes for the minutes. March 28th, we're looking at March 28th right now. Hearing none, do I have a motion to accept the minute with the changes that David proposed?
So moved.
Second,
All in favor?
aye.
Online, if you do a little hand function or just raise your hand.
Aye.
I see, Ashley's got it.
Hi. Yes.
Celia, if you put your hand above your head, I'll be able to see
finger.
it.
Yeah,
You
there
see
it
me?
There you go. All right, fantastic. It looks like all.
Extension.
You can see it?
Yep, I can see it. All right.
Sorry.
Okay, let's, let's do approval of the minutes from April 11th. Task force meeting. Oh, I don't think there's any abstentions from March 28th, right?
There probably won't.
Were there? Were
I
you
don't think
absent?
so,
Okay, because you had changes.
but you gotta ask for it.
That's right. I will on this one. I'm aware of it. All right, are there any changes for April 11th? I know we just got them, so let me give you a minute to. Again, if you have minor grammatical things that do not change the, like the entire sentence structure or whatever, we can always email those.
I have one question. I'm
Sure.
not sure it's an edit, but
Okay,
there's a reference in here a couple times to Mr. Jay Taylor, which I presume is Jim Taylor, but was he at the meeting or was this just referring to discussions with, and why are we not using his full name? Just,
He was at a meeting that Randy and I had together with him. And certainly we could add his full name.
well, I thought that that's who it was,
Yeah.
but I didn't feel like the minutes talked about who he was. Like,
Okay.
why were you meeting with him in the first place? Because of whatever his responsibilities are. I may have missed it, but that's why I was asking.
Yeah, I think you raise a good point, Maynard, that, you know, he's mentioned he should be identified.
Yeah, so on line 77, Ms. Saxton said she and Mr. Taylor met with Mr. J. Taylor and developed a fair amount of additional content. And, I mean, I think I understand Jim's role in this, but
Yes.
I don't think it's apparent in the minutes.
Yes, so for Lee's benefit, let's go ahead and use Jim's full name, Jim Taylor, and you can identify him at least initially as the Public Works Director.
Perfect. I will do that.
Excellent.
yeah, at least the first time. I think the subsequent times you can say Jay Taylor.
Yeah, that's,
In your
yeah,
sense,
yeah.
but-
absolutely.
I have one question.
Okay,
Since I was here, line 142
uh-huh,
to 143, it says there were only 80 new units of housing per year. I suspect that that's referencing the entire decade that was spoken about in my opinion.
I think so. Sounds right.
I don't think we did 80 units per year.
So your suggestion is there were
I-
134 new units permitted.
I'm asking the questions. I wasn't here at the meeting, so I don't know what.
yeah, so I think in
What was discussed,
138, it's saying building permits from 2010 to present.
Right.
And is then the 134, 54, and 80 all referring to that time frame?
That's my question, because 80 per year seems, that would have been 800 new units in the last decade.
No,
It sounds like you could just delete per year,
Yeah,
since you've already referenced the 2010 to present. And then everything would be reflecting that period of time.
I think that's exactly right.
Yeah. All right. So we'll omit per year because we're talking about the net. Right? Yeah, the net amount of houses. Tell I do my banking really well. Gross net. Okay. Any other changes? No? Okay, hearing none. I will go, so can I have a motion to accept the meeting minutes from April 11th, 2022, as amended?
Motion to accept as amended.
Second,
Second, Roderick. All in favor?
aye.
Aye.
I,
All right, so,
And I'm abstaining.
and all abstaining. So
1, 2, 3.
Eric, Lindsay, Maynard abstain. And it looks like, so David, Brad, Bridget, Seeley, and Ashley, did you accept it? Yep, okay. All right, and then again, and I just noticed in here, just for the minutes, we do have a guest in audience, Kurt Goddard, been here since the beginning, arrived at 6 p.m. Great, All right, on to new business. So review, subcommittees revisions to first draft based on focus group feedbacks. So we were gonna take a look at economic development, land use, and visioning, and at least talk about the feedback and draft changes that may have been made. So where do we wanna kick this off?
So Bridget, do you happen to have the draft that we worked on?
I do. What is the preference? Am I allowed to share it, or would you prefer that we go through and tell you the changes?
Yeah,
I'd
I'd
like
like to see you put it up on the screen.
to see you put it up on the screen. Can you do that? Do you have the,
As long as I have permissions to share.
do I need to do anything?
no. I don't use Teams.
I mean, I think. Hold on, it seems like it might be letting me.
Look at your share all the way up next to leave.
I think that's for me to share.
Sometimes they give a menu next to it.
See if she can do it
Okay.
first.
Do you have a share button, Bridget?
Yeah, being asked those questions on the computer, but. We need permission to share your screen.
Anybody have any ideas how to do it?
Right there.
What about this more menu button?
Device call,
Device
meeting
settings.
options, go to meeting options.
Right here?
Yep,
See?
see that? And who
Who
can present?
Everyone.
Where do you see it? Right there.
Yep. No.
Is that the same share?
All right, go down further. Love to learn in real time.
And so I was trying to see if mine.
It's too common.
Yeah.
How about clicking share above the leave button?
Yeah,
What
he
happens
did.
there?
You tried that?
Oh, you did, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Heard directly.
Yeah, I tried that too. It all gave me those options for,
So click on Bridget's.
fit to frame, pin, mute, spotlight.
No, no, that'll just put her in the big thing. Under
All right,
participant.
let's try that. Let's see, maybe here.
No,
Nope. Oh, make her an attendee. Will that do something?
yeah, hit the
Yeah,
change.
that's it.
All right, Bridget, do you
Try
have
that,
it?
Bridget.
Says I'm an attendee, you won't be able to share content or facilitate.
Interesting.
The message it just gave me. I wonder if it's
So you-
because I'm not using the full download of Microsoft. I'm a guest through the browser. How's this? What if I just email it to Rob?
Try that. Brandy saw this coming and she sent me a whole bunch of stuff too. She said she has the same problems.
Yeah.
On the sharing toolbar, select, where did that go?
Went way too fast.
Who was that?
Select, give control. Select the name of the person you want to control to. They go to share,
Sharing toolbar right here.
yeah,
Yeah,
give control.
You see it?
Nope. Go down.
scroll down.
I don't see it.
Okay, it says select share content, which I think is,
Got it?
this is probably for Bridget to use. but maybe not. Select what you want to share, and that would be screen, and that should do it.
He's not
Well,
seeing that on-
Bridget's now listed as a guest, so she can't do it as a guest. She needs to be a participant. There we
Yeah,
go.
see Bridget's,
There we go. Let's do it that way.
I also did email it to you, Rob.
Yeah, we got the email, he's pulling
If
it
all
up.
else fails, just,
let's download it so I can see it a little better.
Okay.
Or not. Okay.
Okay.
because I do select it and it just seems to disappear into the unknown after I select the document to
Then I
share.
click on
so-
look, not doing it.
Go to the ellipses and maybe you can.
Can you guys read that?
I can read it.
I
can-
can once we get once we get the rest of the group back though, because you need to share it from there.
Yeah,
I
well-
don't think we'll be able to, but. So yeah, go to window. And then that one.
Can you guys see it?
Yep,
Okay. All right. Phew.
is it showing the edits?
It's not showing any edits.
So I think you have to download it.
It's not letting him download it.
How am I trying to click on that? It doesn't do it.
Yeah.
I can walk us.
Instead of opening it and hitting download, go back to the email and see if you can download it directly from the attachment. So from right there, look at the down thing and do download on the bottom. And it just did something to an arrow went down
Yeah,
towards the
I
bottom
saw
of the
that.
screen.
Let's try this. This is gonna work.
Okay,
I think we're there.
but
Let
you
me just,
need to go to
let me
the,
get back to this though. I need to,
well,
I need to go to share.
Right, because in the view, you want to see
the
that.
back in Word though, you're gonna have to get it to show edits.
Okay,
All right.
Upload blocked, we couldn't verify you have the necessary permissions to upload this.
all right, how do we see the edits? You guys
Go
know?
to view.
Into review, go into review and you show all markup over to go the other way. Track changes, it should be showing. It says all markup is showing. Up above that.
Well, it says all markup is.
There it is. Yeah, I
Yeah,
can see-
so it should be showing them.
Okay,
I don't know why it blocked the upload. but-
maybe it did.
Oh,
There is
There it is, so you can see them.
Bridget
Okay.
Labrie deleted. There we go.
Yep.
Yep,
You can
okay,
see.
okay. So Bridget, do you want to talk through this as we go through, since you're the person who was
I did.
at the board as we walk through this?
No, you could do it. I mean, we did it together. I just typed them in there.
Okay,
Okay,
so we did just some wordsmithing as we went through. I haven't looked at this today, and it's been 2 weeks since Bridget and I went through this, so I can't tell you without starting to scroll through whether or not we made some significant changes to stuff. So can we maybe start scrolling? Most businesses in town are very small and resident-owned. So does that underscore, Bridget, indicate that that's something we inserted?
For some reason it had moved the T and the rest of the word had moved down, so just showing that there was a change. I put it back where it belonged, so it was a whole word.
Okay. And we deleted something in the inventory and trends, but we don't know what it was.
It was just a space. It was a new paragraph that was deleted, so we can go past that.
Okay.
keep going.
It'll show you. There we go. So we just made a note about some of the sources for some of the comments below.
We talked this, the perspective priorities, we start off by attributing things to residents. They'd like to see more small, and that they don't see our community becoming a major employment center, whatever. And it just seemed to us that we needed to insert in here somewhere the basis of these statements, that they either came from our focus groups or our surveys or maybe it's just a single sentence that says we conducted these different analyses and this is what we heard from them. Because without it, it just seems like we're making some statements that come out of nowhere.
Keep going down.
Yeah. Let's see. So we talked about the
Pull up.
kind of stuff. And this is just editing and wordsmithing a bit. We'll back up a little bit, Rob. We still have this paragraph about the sewer capacity. We don't have numbers yet. We don't want to lose track of the fact that we still need to put numbers in there for the amount of the capacity and the percentage that we've been allocated.
I think Brandy
We
had.
do have those numbers now from Jim, so
Okay.
we will be able, on the next version, I'll get those in there.
Okay, good, thank you. So we added this 3.3 as a recommendation to what Brandy had pulled together because we thought that's what we were hearing and we just missed it in the recommendation. So the idea was to actually have a town-sponsored economic development committee that would work with these different organizations to help our economic focus here. So that's why we created the 3.3 A and B. I don't know why 3.4 is no, maybe we might not have taken advantage of Word properly to be able to do the numbers, but I don't think we've actually deleted a 3.4, or we did, actually, Bridget's got it over there, delete 3.4. Just don't know what 3.4 was.
Yeah, and I don't know, for some reason it didn't change itself, so I don't know that they are linked necessarily, because I don't think that's standard numbering, so it probably confuses Word. So we just.
Yeah, it's just text.
Yeah,
So you took what were 3 and 4 and combined them as sub items under a new 3. So I'll fix the numbering when we go forward. It's fine.
I think, we tried to just kind of, and, Brandy, you were there as well, kind of look at what we were told,
What?
through the subgroup. And, tweak it a little bit. As we know, some of the feedback we got had to do with the rural word, I should say. People didn't love that. I think, Rob, if you go back up, we talk about some of the programs like TIF and all of that. And I think, there was a discussion, and it might be kind of in here too, though, which I think, yeah, so B, I think that's why we tried to make it that as well. I think that covers the conversation around increasing knowledge of the programs. But I don't know if we should explain that anymore or expect that people know what we mean when we say increase awareness of economic development programs. Maybe it's clear enough within the chapter itself.
Okay.
But.
And what you have for B was actually 3-4, so that's where it went.
Right, so we were trying to
Yeah.
say that that really ought to be the responsibility of this committee. That's one of the things that the
Right,
committee
right.
charged.
Yeah.
Right, so it got done. Celia, do you have a question?
Yes, yep. Can you hear me? No.
Yep.
Right?
Yes, we can.
Nope.
Okay.
There,
Can you hear me?
yes, now we
Yes.
I
can.
just want to know, on 3-6, why are we taking the Route 4 corridor to be split with infrastructure, sidewalks, and so on, and complete streets? Why is that taken out?
Not taken out. It's put in. It's elaborating on it.
The red
It's in
ceiling,
red.
yeah, we
right?
added it in there. That's why it's in red.
You added it in there,
Yeah,
Yes,
and you deleted what? The word "and"?
well, that's
Yeah.
it.
Am I reading this wrong? Oh, okay.
yeah, just read what it is. If it's deleted, it will have a line going through it or it won't be there, so don't worry about what's on the right side. But if you see it in red on the main page,
Okay.
we added it there. So yeah, that's added in.
Okay. I got it. Okay. Thank you.
No problem. God.
All right. Can we go ahead and stop sharing? So we can see our folks. All right,
Let's see, when do we stop share? Can't remember.
just hit, I think, stop sharing. There you go. Okay, so my questions for the Economic Development Committee. Just to, so some of the comments, when we go back to, luckily, we have very thorough minutes from the 38 or the 28th. And it was hard to read those. There were comments about just, again, rural, but we are a rural town, so unfortunately, that is our actual delineation, so it's not taking that out, but were you able to add in, I think there was a feeling that was conveyed that we're not very welcoming to new businesses, or it didn't read that way. And while this isn't a promotional document, were you able to sort of identify some of those spaces that folks were referring to? Do you feel that?
One of the things we talked about that didn't seem to be inviting
Mm-hmm.
were the use of some of the pictures that we have.
Okay,
And we haven't come up with any substitute pictures yet.
okay,
Unless Bridget's done something since we last talked, but that was the idea, was to look for something that depicted a more inviting environment from an economic development perspective.
okay.
Lindsay, I also made further edits to the perspectives and priorities section as well in response to some of those comments. So,
Okay,
yeah, so I think some of that will be addressed there too.
cool. So one of the things, I'm gonna jump really quickly before land use, because David and I met and went over all of the comments from the planning board. And I think, did you share those with Brandy?
Unless
Kind of.
Brandy has listened to the recording of it, Brandy has no knowledge of it.
Okay, so one of two of the main comments that came up, and actually, and the reason I'm addressing them right now is because it kind of came up in what Bridget and Maynard were talking about. One was prioritizing the recommendations in each of the chapters. Folks tend to think linearly, like if something's number one, that's the biggest priority. Number two, that's even if it's A, B, C, whatever. So I don't know if that's necessarily possible. But I'd be interested in digging, and that would be throughout the entire master plan, that all the recommendations or we have to address that they're all equally important. I'm not sure. So Brandy, some thoughts on that?
I think that when the implementation chapter is there, that concern might be addressed there. I would say that within the chapters, they're not prioritized. They are kind of equal. But what we'll get to in the implementation chapter is more of a organization that's laid out in sort of what's can be done first, what's the long term, what's a near term project, what's you have the existing resources to sort of go ahead and do what you need to find resources, or it's going to be a larger resource project that needs to happen. So I think some of that ranking and prioritization will come out of the implementation matrix.
Okay.
Is
So
it,
it may be beneficial to think about, again, if people are just looking, if we think that they're not reading it all the way through and they're just like, people who are interested in economic development or just hitting the economic development chapter, that we add in somewhere in the recommendations, just that like footnote or link to, you know, just thinking the next steps, like, go to implementation chapter to see, you know, or I don't know, just a link or a footnote to that effect, that these are not ranked in order, that, you know, it's in the implementation chapter. That was a comment that came up over and over, and that's, I'm just trying to find a way to deal with that so that it's addressed, but also giving people, like, leading them to the spot where they can find it. And we have to really lead all the horses to the water. So,
Do you want to take a comment from Kurt at this time?
Well, basically,
Sure.
I'll to say what you were trying to say also is that if you're not going to rank the individual chapters priority block, then you definitely need to make a comment somewhere in that block, not in any specific order, to something to that effect.
Mhm.
Because, I mean, when we first started at the planning board, everybody said, well, multiple people made the comments, this needs to be prioritized.
Right.
So they were looking for that.
Mhm.
And if it's not there, and they think that, well, this is the priority, but in reality, it's not, a lot of people are gonna get upset. So it's either you prioritize them, or you make a very clear note, this is not in any specific order.
Yeah. Yep, I think that's just our natural tendency, that things are ranked in order.
Yeah.
So finding a way to deal with that. The other one, and Maynard and Bridget kind of pulled it out a little bit, and it was another comment that we heard over and over, and so I've had some questions around this comment, was citations and sources. And to me, this is like part of the like layering, especially on the web. But first, how much citations and sources are put in a master plan versus, you know, I'm trying to figure out, like, if we're citing the US Census, then obviously, you know, or if we're using data that came from one of our questions from the survey, is it possible to have like a link to just that graph or something like that, like as layer 2 or 3?
So we can definitely go through once we've got the text solidified and do those linkages. So the full survey results are in appendices in the back of the plan. So
Right.
you could make those jumps to the pieces of that report that are relevant, and then you can do hyperlinks, obviously, to other things. I've done some of that, but I haven't done a lot of it because we're still pretty fluid with working on the text.
Right. That's what I figured. I'm just trying to deal with this comment, and I'm also trying to figure out what it all means. So, because my initial reaction is that we're not grounding this in the literature. This is not a peer-reviewed report, like blah blah blah. But because the way it was like, we need citations, we need citations, we need citations, and, but I guess anytime if there is anything that comes from the literature, that we have we can pop to it. You know, especially like, especially if it's work that's being done by other groups, you know, so if we're referencing housing, when I finish, when we're referencing housing trends or something like that, we can, you know, we'll have a link that goes to the work that's being done by Keys of the Valley or whatever, you know, that just grounds it something. Is that typical? Is that, Brandy, in your experience?
So there is actually, the Keys to the Valley link is actually there. That's one of the few I think I've put in so far. So that's good. That one is there. I normally discourage writing the plan as if it was a, you know, thesis, or it was a, you know, academic article, because let's face it, none of us like to read those. So we try to make it more basically magazine style, as much as possible. So it is something that people will flip through, but we do want, you know, to provide information. So I think the thing to do would be to go through as you're looking at it, and, you know, when you see things that you think you want are suitable for sort of that deeper dig. I think most of the citations are there to the demographic and economic type data, you know, the Census Bureau or something like that. But if there are other things that you think you'd like to see more, I know we have a list from some of the other meetings about having some more information on things like complete streets, was one that's popping into my mind, as I know I have a note on. So, you know, I think we're going to look to do some of that sort of jumping off into other resources.
Great. Okay. Yeah, that was kind of the, that's what I'm trying to decipher. So Kurt, what did you?
Basically, my understanding was, and some of my concerns was on the raw data, you say the pie chart, the charts or the graphs, you're using data from somewhere, but there's no source listed. And same as the maps, there was blocks on the maps of different features, but there was no sources of where that information came from. So even if it's just a footnote with a number, and you have this 1-2 page, whatever, at the very end of here's all your footnotes, and this is where the raw data came from. And then if someone wants to go and do the further research, it's available.
Right.
But right now you look at it and go like, I don't know where this stuff came from. I don't even know where to look. So just something like that. I understand not writing it to a thesis basis type of documents, but just having just numbered footnotes that someone can go back and if they want to do the further research. So because the perception is going to be, well, it was just the planning board or the master plan task force just made this stuff up. When in reality, it's not true.
I think some of them are captured in the text itself. And what we're dealing with here is we're, at least we're putting a master plan that's mostly web-based versus the old way where it's a big thing where you have a giant citation, couple pages in the back. So that's where it may not have come across yet in the stuff that you've seen, because you're seeing on paper something that's going to be layered on the internet. So that's where,
unless I can scroll my mouse over, my cursor over that block, that pie chart, and it says where that came from.
Right.
If that's
And
not
that's,
there,
and that's what we're talking about. I mean,
That's the way it should work.
it is, and it's a little bit away, we're a little bit away from that. So I get, like, I want to make sure that comment is for the record, but we're just not there yet. We've been working on the text part, but I also want to make sure that it's not, we're not having to ground, like, again, as I assumed and as Brandy has just confirmed, we're not grounding this in the literature and pulling out, like, you know, it's not that. And that's why I'm trying to also figure out some of the citation comments. It's not graphs, of course, and things that come from data that, especially like census data or data that's come from the stuff that we've gathered,
Yeah.
are easy. If there's other citations people are looking for, some more information like complete streets, or, if we reference stuff, makes sense, and in other spaces, it doesn't make sense. So that's what we need to find that balance here. So I just wanted to hit on those because they just kind of popped out of the economic development chapter for me. Any other comments at the moment for economic development or Eric, Fred? No? All right. Thank you, Maynard and Bridget. Did you send your stuff to Brandy?
This document, we did not, but I just sent it to Rob if he wants to forward it on.
Great. Land use.
Okay, so, I hope I have my dates right on this, but I think it was after our last meeting. Sealy and Brandy and I continued the discussion on land use. And we went over, a lot of the maps and a lot of the comments. And I have, we left it in Brandy's hands to incorporate those. And, Brandy, where do we stand on that? Have you been able to do that revision or?
Yep, so I have spent the last time of the last 2 weeks primarily working on the map part of the land use chapter. And I think rather than go through the torturous effort to try to share my screen, if you've got the maps I emailed you, Rob, if you could sort of pop those up and I'll talk through where we are with map changes, most importantly with the changes to the future land use map. But why don't we start with the current land use map, and that's the one that's labeled CULU, the Kulu map.
This one, the village?
Hold on.
There's both a village detail one and the full town one.
That's it?
Yep, so this is the village detail of the
You have
current
the
land use
pages
map.
before,
So you guys don't have this. So it's hot off the presses, at least digitally. So one of the things that we had talked about was the need to have more detailed maps of the village area. So this is the current land use, more detailed. The one thing that I'm hoping that you guys are going to be able to do now that we've got the map at this scale is take a look at this and check this back against your knowledge of the village and where there are businesses, where there is housing, where there's multi-unit housing, where there are mixed use properties. I only have one mixed use property showing up in the village from the assessment records. I suspect there is more than that. So, that's something for you guys to spend. You can now see it at a higher level of detail, and we can maybe refine that a little bit. And if there's anything else you want labeled, sort of give you a sense of what's happening now in the village, or any other notes you want on here, let me know. But this is that detailed version for the village of the town level current land use map.
Cool. You said you only had one mixed use? Aren't all the
Yeah.
things-
I only have one on High Street. You see that one orange property?
Rob, can you adjust the map a little bit? Because we're missing some of the legend at the top. Just scroll that bar up a little bit.
Yep.
Yeah.
Commercial is red.
Oh, okay. Okay, so yeah,
This one right here is mixed use, I know that.
is it?
Yeah.
Okay,
So if, that's something that doesn't show up in assessment data very well. So, I assume there are some things that are listed as residential that actually have businesses in them in addition to a residence or an apartment.
This one here would be mixed use too, wouldn't it?
Yes.
Yeah,
cool, all right.
So,
We can
so
have
the
that.
next, for the next time, we guys can print one of these out and scribble over it, and we can get that updated.
Cool.
Okay.
Okay, you want to go to another one?
Yeah, just I don't know that you necessarily need to show the full town one. We did make a few corrections to it, based on, input, so that one, largely the same, but there was a couple of tweaks to correct things. The habitat map, can you put that one up next?
Sure thing. Download this time too. Share. Okay.
Okay.
Habitat.
So this is the habitat map. So there was a request to add a habitat map to the land use chapter. We do have, the water resources map. We've got a soil suitability map, a slope map. So there was a request to add a habitat map. I looked through the available information layers. What I'm showing here are the state layers that come from the New Hampshire Wildlife Action Plan. Those seem to be the most current data layers from the state. This does not include at this point any of your mapped natural resource inventory data. So that would sort of be a next step if you wanted to try to incorporate some of that data. But per our discussion from the last meeting, the mapped data part of your natural resource inventory hasn't been updated since 2005. So we do have those layers, but they are from 2005-ish. So this map is sort of doing two things. So the underlying layer with the green colors is showing you what you obviously know, that Enfield is largely forested. And so this breaks out different types of forest in those different shades of green for the most part. That shows the land cover. And so this is remote sensing data that they did statewide to give a sense of what kind of habitats you have out there. So you've got, starting with the yellow color, that's grassland, and there's sort of a brownish color that's sort of rock, whether it's cliff or a ridge or something like that. It's essentially a rock surface. And then there's 3 forest types. So there's the darkest green forest type, which is the upland northern hardwood conifer forest type. And then the sort of mid-range green color, that's the predominant color of the map, that's classified as a hemlock hardwood forest. And then there's a little bit of patches that are sort of more of a darker blue-green. That's a floodplain forest area. There's not a lot of that. And there's some little areas of wet meadow or shrub wetland, and then swamp and peatland areas. And then anything else is either developed or disturbed land, like extraction areas and roadways and things like that. Obviously developed sites. So that's the underlying land cover. And then they do have a ranking layer that shows areas of habitat that are ranked as highest value at a state level and then at a regional level. And so the state level areas are what's shown with the red outlined on the map. So yeah, something like that one there. Yep. And then the more purple colored magenta colored one is the regional importance layer there. So that gives you some sense of the resources that are considered the highest value. Interestingly, it's primarily the riparian corridors. Here you've got some grassland areas that come in as being high ranking, probably because of the rarity of open land, given the predominance of forest. So, so that's a good first cut, I think, at the habitat mapping. Questions there?
Have a question, well, comment, I guess. When you're calling, grasslands, can you just make it like, also put a label there as open field? Because that's how it's commonly referred to here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would assume that most of that is actual, pasture, hayfield type land. It's not natural savanna, I don't think, but.
Yeah, I mean, when I get grassland, I think out west grasslands. Right here.
Yeah, that's the official land cover term for it, but yeah, it's hay fields for the most part.
It's grass, but.
Sealy, any thoughts, comments?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you.
Did you mention wetlands earlier in this map? For habitat at all?
Yes, so Celie,
For the highest
wetlands,
ranking.
There is an evidence here of the wetlands. They show up as being swamp or wet meadow areas, so it's sort of the more aqua colored areas on the map. There's a few of those that are also in the higher ranking areas. You can, when you get a chance to look at this map up close, you'll be able to zoom in and see that. And then remember, there is a second map that deals with wetlands as well and shows the wetlands in town that you have mapped.
Okay, I'm just checking because I didn't know whether you were saying that the high value was the higher value, but the prime wetlands was the high value that we did. So
I was just
come down a little.
My comment was more just sort of a point of interest that if you look at the areas that are outlined in red, most of those on your map are either riparian corridors or they're the open lands. Where the areas that are regionally important, those do include more of the wetlands as well.
Do they have
now,
update,
the other question I have about the wildlife? Let's see, I don't want to talk over him, but the wildlife goes all through. What?
Go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
The wildlife travel through a lot of that area. That's part of their homing too, because there's, there are deer yards, which change over time because of the logging and so on and so forth. But none of that is really there or talked about. I'd rather have it to make people aware that it's there within the forested areas. The wildlife, people have it in their backyards, the bears and the moose, and they travel throughout, but they're coming from those areas that you got in red. I just want somehow to get that designated. That's all.
So
Go ahead.
I will
Kurt.
go back and look again at the data sets, but I actually do not think there is a more detailed set of sort of wildlife corridor or basically, yeah, like a travel corridor mapping. I don't think that you have that. I think there's discussion, like narrative discussion of it in the natural resource inventory, but I don't think it's mapped. And so we are still working our way through the mapping data and sorting it back to the sort of lining it back up with the printed versions
Okay.
of the maps that we do have from 2005. But I have yet to come across
Okay.
wildlife travel corridor type mapping that would lend itself to being put on the map.
Okay. Not even with our wetland studies? The primary, because that's all written out. Like along the bog road and up there, and I mean, you can drive down the bog road, you have the moose walk right down in front of you. And they
Yeah, I think that's
they
kind of what
go
I'm
between
saying too.
that
Like,
and the New Hampshire Fish and Game.
yeah, I think that's what I'm trying to
It's not-
say is that
not what-
your natural resource
Go ahead.
inventory talks about it, but it isn't mapped.
Okay. All right. We'll have to do something about that. Conservation has to do something about it. Okay, thank you.
So, I mean, I'm
Done.
not saying that stuff isn't important. But I guess my thought would be, how detailed in that area do we need to get in the master plan when we have a whole separate report that people can reference that talks about it? You know, I think making sure that people are aware of, you know, the area and what we have here is one thing, but I'm just curious, having not read many master plans, you know, how detailed do you really want to get in that kind of stuff? I think this map is really useful, but I'm just not, I guess I would just caution that we already are going to have a document that, though living, is going to be pretty large. And we want to make sure that the information is pulling from things that exist maybe, but not just a copy of something that already is in existence, if that makes sense. Is that fair?
So this is something that we talked a little bit about back and forth because you don't have a natural resources chapter at this point. So
Right.
how much information to put into the land use chapter? I think the goal is to try to get enough so that it provides a foundation for the land use policies that you've got, but you are right that the idea is to reference these other available documents and to not necessarily sort of bring them in verbatim or at that level of detail.
Okay. Yeah, I think that this is useful, but more of, like you said, it's a taste of, but more to come in that chapter, and also can be found in other things.
I think this map with the underlying sort of land cover does lend itself well to being in the land use chapter. I think it fits in with the discussion well. So I think that works. If you know you did want to include more wildlife information on this map, that would be possible. But I think it works at the level it's at as well.
Yeah, sorry, I wasn't saying this map. I just meant kind of to Celi's comments. Like, I think that information is good to have, but maybe just hold for the next chapter kind of thing, and not dig too far for people here.
Mm-hmm.
And send them to the documents that already exist.
Okay, so is there anything else on the habitat map? If not, Rob, I'll have you jump to the suitability map. I think that's the first one I sent you. So to frame this one, there was discussion of taking the build-out map out, maybe leaving some of the data that comes from the build-out in, but removing the actual map itself from the center of the land use chapter. And in response to some of the comments that you had received, there were questions around, well, where should development be occurring in town? Where can development occur in town? So this is a sort of the other side of that map in some ways. This is looking at a series of factors that make land either better or suited or less well suited for development. And so those areas that are coming in here in red end up scoring the highest in this analysis, making them the most suitable locations. And then it steps down through orange and yellow to sort of the grayish green. And then the hatched areas are those lands that are public or conserved, so they're not available for future development. So I just wanted to distinguish those out in there. So in terms of what factors I use to do this, and it is something, if you have some other thoughts about factors that would be important in Enfield that I didn't take into account, it's still possible to do that. But this so it has 3 levels. So there's the things that are the most important factors, and they have the heaviest weight in the analysis, and that's how close the land is to an existing road. And there's 2 classifications there, one for the state highways and one for other public maintained roads, whether or not land's in the special flood hazard area, and then within that, whether it's in the floodway where you really can't develop, or it's in the flood fringe area where you can, but you have to meet the rules. And then there's sewer, and if there isn't sewer, how suitable are the soils for septic systems? So we have that map, remember, for soil suitability, so that data got put in here. Then the slope map. So the slope data got put in. So if you're under 15% slope, that was the most classified as the most developable land. And then the stuff that's over 15 to 25 was sort of a mid category. And if it was over 25, it was in the very not suitable category. So those are the first set of 4 factors with the highest weights. And then in the midway, we looked basically at the natural resource constraints. So what the current land cover is it open land? Is it wooded land? Is it already developed land? Looked at the presence of wetlands and hydric soils. So those areas got taken into account, and I think that shows up actually pretty evidently in the map. You can definitely see those areas falling out down to the poorly suited category. Looked at proximity to surface water features. So the immediate area adjacent is less suitable. Sitting further back from those features is more suitable, and use that wildlife habitat layer that we were just looking at to mark out those areas that were high ranked, either state level or regional level as habitat resources. And then the low weight factors, these are primarily having to do with the configuration of the land. So the improved value to land value, it's a little math problem, but it basically is looking at, well, has this piece of land already been built on? And if it's been built on, you know, sort of already invested in to a certain level, it's unlikely to be, you know, scraped off and start over or something like that. So redevelopment becomes less likely the higher that improved value to land value becomes. Parcel size, you know, obviously if you've got 20 acres, you've got more opportunities to do something with it than if you've got half an acre. So that the parcel size is a factor. Frontage to the lot area. So if you have a lot of land but no frontage, that's less useful than if you have a good amount of frontage to go with a good amount of land. And then I added one amenity factor in. Given the amount of open space you have and how clearly important access to recreation seems to be for most people who are choosing to live in Enfield, I did throw in that proximity to public open space. So the land that's closer to these existing public open space resources ranked a little bit higher, and those were in the low weight factor group. So basically run all this math together and get a score for all the areas of land in town. And that's what you see presented out here. So you can see the influence of, you know, the areas along the roads being a little better suited. You could see the influence, like I said, of the steep slopes and the wet areas as falling out as poorly suited in there as well. So I don't know what your thoughts are on sort of seeing that, if it kind of lines up with how you see the landscape in Enfield or a way you've ever thought about it. The one thing that did strike me, and my place names are going to be bad, Rob. So you're going to have to try to get this. If you go down 4A past Bog Road towards George Hill Road.
Yeah.
So this actually rises up this area of town in the ranking, despite the fact that it's not Seward, obviously. But in terms of good soils and proximity to the road and such, which this doesn't line up quite as well necessarily with our future land use map as it might. So that's the one area that I saw that I was a little bit like, that's a bit different than what we kind of are envisioning for the future, sort of how solidly orange and a little bit red that is.
Yep, the residents that live out there are very afraid of that very fact. It's not the information they want to hear, I can guarantee you. There's fear that an apartment complex is going up on George Hill Road. There's a rumor.
Are we gonna have access to these, Rob, to be able to kind of dig into them ourselves?
Yes.
Mhm.
She sent them all to me. I'll send them all out to you guys.
Great.
So, I guess the biggest thing for me, Brandy, is that, and these are, I think they're awesome, is that we need all that narrative that you just gave us.
Yeah,
You
it
know,
needs to get distilled into the plan.
Yeah, it needs to get distilled into the plan, exactly what we're looking at, what are the factors, what are those numbers, I saw that there were scores in the legend, and so what went into those scores, and that kind of stuff is just, that's what's gonna be important, so that any, and written at the, what did we decide, 6th, 8th grade level, what's USA Today written at, 6th grade level?
8th grade.
Just so again, for consumption's sake, and then, you know, things that can dig a little deeper, hyperlinks that can, but I think it's just gonna be really important to explain. I think it's a really powerful map for me. Definitely people in George Hill Road are not gonna like it. But yeah, so.
This is
Hold on.
this is a suitability map, not
Right.
a recommendation map.
Right, and that's,
Yeah.
yeah, and again.
All this is
that's-
saying is it's suitable. It's not saying
Yeah.
there's no judgment about.
Right.
what we should recommend.
Right.
So I don't think that this map is problematic. It's just,
Yeah,
it is what it is.
right.
It's
No,
suitable.
I see that.
Yeah, I mean, in theory, the George Hill Road residents could say, we like it the way it is, and we want you to zone this area so that it doesn't change a whole lot.
Yes, no.
Even though it's suitable,
Right, no, that's my
not in
point.
my backyard.
Right.
I don't think there's any judgment here. This is just the suitability map,
Right.
not a recommendation map.
Right. No, and I think again, we have to make sure to keep saying that when it's like, these are just the facts. These are facts right here. These are like, this is, and that because, as we have different folks looking at it and creating narratives, like, this is a suitability map, not.
Yeah, I got two comments. One is, someone looking at that, the first thing they're gonna do is look where do they live on the
Mhm.
map? And if they see Bog Road saying high development potential, they're gonna, depending on if they are a developer or if they want big open spaces, how they're gonna react. So yeah, that's something you're gonna have to be clear about. But my other comment is just more on the map in general. I don't know, this is a new version, so I don't know if it's been changed. The previous ones I was looking at, I had some questions regarding the blocks of land that were labeled as open space conserved lands. I thought some of them were just mislabeled, but I haven't had a chance to do
Right.
detailed research on that. It's just something you want to make sure that is correct. Because if somebody,
So as far as I know, Kurt, those are correct. So if you think that there's some in there that shouldn't be, or some that are missing, let me know the details of that. So this comes from the assessment data in terms of, so we're capturing state land. There may be some town land in there. There's land owned by the Upper Valley Land Trust. There is land from the Society for the Protection of New Hampshire Forests. There's land that's associated with the Grafton Pond Land Trust. Then there are some lands that have been put into private conservation as well. So they're still privately owned land, but they've sold off their development rights. So those are the classifications of what we've got
the
here.
last one, it was probably catching my eye because it's, I'm familiar with the Land Trust and the Forest Society, along with the state lands. And they're a separate entity that's a conservation group that holds either easement or a title. It's that third group that's can be quasi questionable, as far as is it really protected? Or are they just calling it protected until they change their mind?
As far as I know, those are easements that are held by the land trust, by the Upper Valley Land Trust.
Right, if they're held by the Land Trust, then it's permanently protected, same as the Forest Society. The Grafton Pond Land Trust is a family entity that's sort of quasi questionable sometimes, I think. There's a forestry group that owns lands that may call themselves a conservation organization, but their focus is forestry. So whether the development rights have really been transferred to a third party or not, I don't know. And that was just probably one of the ones that I picked up on, because I sort of like, I wasn't aware of that being conserved.
Sealy.
I'm I'm missing something. On the other, I don't see the legend on my screen. On the other side of below. Wait a minute. The light yellow that you've got on the other side of where George Pond is. Somewhat well suited, somewhat poorly suited.
Okay, which one?
Okay, I got it.
I don't think that helped the way I thought it would.
It was the light color that was along below George Hill Road and along the Bog Road,
The yellowish,
the light colored.
So there's
I-
a yellow Sealy that's the somewhat poorly suited, and then
Well,
when it
it's a
kind of
light
goes
tan.
to to a beigey gray kind of color, that's the poorly suited, the lowest ranked set. So that tends to
Yeah.
be the wetland areas and the very steep slopes that fall into
Yes,
those arrow colors.
that's good. That's good. I like that. You picked up on that. I'm glad. I really wanted to see soils, but I think you've covered them with a poorly drained. Good.
Yeah, it picks up the hydric soils,
Okay.
and as well. So I think we're capturing the places that are wet pretty effectively.
That's good though. It's good.
Okay. So let's move to future land use if there's nothing else on the suitability map. And that one's Fulu. You're all gonna know planner jargon speak by the time you're done.
Hulu.
Fulu, future land use. So there was discussion about reducing the size of the center residential area that we were showing as a future land use planning area and bringing that back a little closer to the road. And so I've made a stab at reworking the line. I think you might want to start, Rob, sort of up where Shaker Hill Road lies off there, so we can sort of watch from Lock Haven Road, or Lock Haven wise off of Shaker Hill, or whichever one comes off of whichever one. So I've redrawn that line that's running between the residential and the rural there. So it's not going all the way over to Crystal Lake anymore. It's kind of cutting down through at a diagonal until it gets down and meets up with Route 4A. If you carry that down through there, Rob, might want to move the map up a little, yeah. And then it pulls up it grabs sort of the upper bit of George Hill Road area as well. So that's a bit reshaped from where it was. And then in response to what you've seen with the suitability map and the discussion we've had, whether you want to see more change to that or if this addresses the concerns and response to the discussion that we had at the last meeting.
I'm the guest though, one for you guys.
Yep, give us a second. Any task force, any comments at the moment?
Can you show us the legend again,
Can we
Rob?
see the legend?
Yeah, so you're looking at the pale yellow, the residential against sort of that, again, that gray green color, that's the rural. So that area that's, and there's an eye there inside the black circle. So that was a larger area. It went all the way basically over to Crystal Lake and then down. So I've taken land that was in that residential planning area and moved it over to the rural planning area.
Bert, comment?
Yeah, I think that's an improvement over the previous version. These are my personal opinions, of course. And I still think it would be beneficial if there was, say, well, the yellowish area now is looking pretty good, but I would still add like little subgroups in there, like IA, IB type of thing, or MI, MB. And same as with maybe the grayish area, because it is such a large area. And my thought process is, because this is only a, not a rejection, a proposal type of thing. If it's more restrictive now, it's easier in the future to make something less restrictive and not have a lot of blowback from the public. But if you start making things more restrictive after the facts, after the public already saw, well, you already called it this designation, and now you're making it more restrictive, they may be more upset versus making it less restrictive, because they got used to seeing it as being restrictive. It's just a psychological aspect of when the planning boards has to sit down and actually write regulations that are going to be specific areas. Instead of just having one set of regulations for all of the yellow area and one set of regulations for all of the gray area, that if it was just little subgroups, and then if they decide that, no, everything's gonna be the same, then that's what they do, but at least initially making it more restricted, focus more as more of a neighborhood block or general section of town blockwise. I mean, that's just my personal thoughts on that. And especially with a lot of the comments from people being they want the rural character, they like the ruralness, they want to stay rural. And how do you define rural is going to be how the regulations get written.
Yeah, and my feeling is that this map is a broad brush, a broad stroke, and what I hear you asking for is a zoning map, which is, of course, the next step.
Okay, well, yeah, but this is what the zoning map's going to be based on.
No, it's not.
Wouldn't be.
It's not, because the zoning map will very likely have the little smaller subdivisions that you're talking about.
So I don't see that happening. I don't think that's going to happen.
Why not?
Because time-wise, just effort involved to do that. People are just gonna say, all the gray areas, there's one designation.
I don't see
That's
that.
what
This map is absolutely not set up to be a zoning map because it doesn't reflect parcel boundaries, which when you do a zoning map, you're definitely going to want to do. It may be that some of these lines would get translated to a zoning map. For instance, you may decide you want to do something similar with like the lakeshore buffer, and the village area actually comes pretty close to property boundaries, but still, it's still not a zoning map. The rest of these areas are much more general than you would do with a zoning map.
Yeah, I just think it should be more closer to an intermediate, somewhere between this and a zoning map, at least in the labeling. Like everything on the northeast corner of Lock Haven Roads could be labeled as something, and everything to the southeast corner be labeled something different. Just a label. Same color, just a different label. Type of thing. Just, and same with the yellow, as you get further away from the town center, it should just be thought about differently. And to think about it differently, it should be shown on the map as being different.
So Brandy, what I'm interested in, and this is is when who uses, in your experience, this match, the future, the FULU map, when does it usually get called into play?
So it does it is the starting point for thinking about how you're going to structure your zoning map eventually. But it's not that you have to start by tracing these lines. If you were to decide that, you know, you are going to plop a area of, you know, industrial zoning in the middle of one of these resource protection blobs, you might have some justification questions. Like, does the plan provide an adequate foundation for you're putting that zoning district there? But, you know, reshaping and adjusting the boundaries between things, breaking them up, you know, the edge, I would say, between rural and residential, it's a transition zone, right? It fades out. And I think Kurt's point is accurate. You do want it to step down as you go out. And so with zoning, you may get that effect in various ways, whether it's through a series of zones, or you use other zoning techniques that are available to achieve that that outcome. But that's what we use it for in the plan, is to really provide that. I think the broad brush idea is a good way of thinking about it, and a description, a sort of narrative description of your vision for the future land use that's tied to the map. Sometimes you also see, we haven't done that yet, but we still actually could add some things to this map. You sometimes see some additional annotation added to these maps. So, you know, if you, you know, wanted to highlight the need for roadway improvements or something like that, you might actually note it on this map. Or if you wanted to emphasize a location that you wanted to see some particular use made of, or something, you might see some of that kind of public facilities, parks, or even, you know, sort of highlighted redevelopment sites could show up on the map through, you know, sort of general symbology, not very specific, but you'll see dashed lines and arrows and, you know, stars and things like that show up on these maps as well, that obviously would not show up on a zoning map.
I think what's most important in looking at the big picture is that everything we put in the plan has like a stated purpose, you know, and not just we're adding it because we like lots of maps or whatever. So I just if this is the common use and this is the type of map, and as the expert, like, we just need the narrative around it is what's important that we're missing here right now, and putting it in the larger context and how this map might be used, that this is a stepping stone to getting where Kurt wants to go. But because just like the last one, people are going to look at it through their different lenses, and so we have to give that as very clear, like, this is what this is showing. And if there's things that we want to add to it, or just what's the purpose of this map being there, and not just to be there because you put it in the master plan. I like to always ask that question. Is it here because it's what we always do, or is it here because, like, it's got information that's necessary and is helping us move forward?
So if there's one thing that needs to be in your plan, this is it. So the future land use map and the future land use narrative is really the core of what the master plan is, and what it needs to do. So those are really, this is a really important piece to get in here. Now, it is not uncommon for municipalities to put their zoning map in as a land use map. And as a planner, I would say this is a really bad idea.
Okay.
And the reason why it's a bad idea is that it locks you in. Now, some people would argue that that's actually a good thing, but I think it is ultimately a bad thing, because you are then, if you're that precise in your future land use map, in your plan, you have no room when you actually go forward to do the zoning to make adjustments. If you're that specific, and clearly drawing what is intended to be a zoning map, then you have to basically adopt that as your zoning map. You have no room. And writing zoning is a negotiation. You don't know necessarily what you're going to get at the end of that negotiation. And so having a more general land use map means you have some room to negotiate, which is really important.
I think there's more to come on this, because as we're getting there, but it's about the discussion around it, and this is good. I greatly appreciate.
My other concern is if you scroll the map up to show I-89 area. Okay, looks like it was well, the middle one, is it F? It's at 15 something or other?
That's exit 15.
Smith Pond, the Smith Pond, that's too big. Just the condition of the road there, Smith Pond Road cannot handle that kind of commercial developments, industrial developments.
It's
It will
steep,
kill the
right?
highway departments. If they put, if you had industrial and development that far up Smith Pond Road. Just from a practical standpoint, that's not a good idea. And the topography there is terrible also. And there's huge, there's a big, massive stream that comes down one side of the road, and the road's minimally maintained.
Right.
And then the other exits, that's a one-way exit. There's no U-turns on that, on the last exit in Enfield. So that's something to consider too, on what type of development would go there.
Right, and I think that's all in the narrative
Yeah.
too. So it's hard to get it all in the map, but the
Yeah.
map refers to the conversation that's in the narrative,
Yeah.
so. Good points. Any other thoughts, comments on Fulu?
I just have one, which is, I think like on the north side of the village,
Mhm.
Maple Street and May Street already are in the orange.
Yep,
And then the sort of I mean, yeah, so both those streets already are part of the village, to the north of where the cursor is. And then I would, I guess, ask the question of, is Anderson Hill, I personally think of Anderson Hill as already being part of it as well, conceptually. But I suppose that could be, people can have different views of that, but certainly, and from my view, I think Maple Street and May Street are already part of the village area.
Mhm.
You know, they have at least water, if not water and sewer the whole way. And people walk into the village from there, it's already part of that.
Yeah.
Experience.
And just a housing density until you get to a certain point.
so, and I can't really follow this, so they're
So,
part of H, or, because I
well,
can't
okay,
see.
so that's May Street, that's
Yeah.
Maple Street,
Yep,
all the way to the Canaan line.
mhm,
Both of
Right.
those streets are already part of the village.
right,
So I would suggest that those become orange all the way out to the Canaan line, conceptually.
but we're not, okay, can you scroll, I can't see.
guess what I'm saying is
I
that-
need to see the key, I'm trying
Yeah.
to figure out what you're saying,
I'm
cause,
saying they.
So
that
I can
even-
tell you the key. I know
okay,
it's hard to move around.
okay, I see.
So,
She has them as residential, not
Right.
village, you're saying that they're village,
yeah, I'm saying like, as a resident of one of those streets,
okay,
they're already in present day village streets, not, you know,
okay,
and I think the one, and then to the right of those, as we're looking at it, Anderson Hill, I think of as being part of the
the
village,
village
but
as well,
I do think that that's a sort of I'm not sure how those folks would feel about it, but there's a pretty high density of housing on there.
so you wouldn't consider that residential?
I would consider it part of the village area because
Orange.
I would consider it orange and all of that. As we think about the future of what, especially as we think of the future of the village of, you know, who has the potential to be walking to all of our resources, riding bikes to all of our resources. I think of those areas as being, you know, part of the village. And and I'm probably in the, certainly many of the people who live there
Mhm.
already walk to the library.
Right,
You know, they already are behaving as if they're in the
Maple
village
May,
area.
yeah, Eastman, it's, is where it comes out onto Route 4 becomes an issue.
Right, but,
Currently,
yeah,
but if that changes, then yeah.
so Brandy?
So I didn't go all the way out because the sewer doesn't go all the way out. But that's not an entirely definitive reason to not go, but that's why the line is where it is, because it sort of reflects the end of sewer.
Is there, so then maybe, okay. Maybe now I'm doing what Kurt was suggesting. Do we have a separate color of orange that's also village, like village,
I think it's just,
or is it just make it bigger?
there's plenty of,
Yeah,
there are a number of places that are already orange that don't have sewer.
okay,
So this is a future map.
right.
I
You know,
mean,
and
Well,
it's
the
a
sewer goes
conceptual
right
map,
up to
it's
there
not
on
tying anybody into
Shaker
anything.
Ridge, yeah.
that would be the natural extension for a water sewer line. Where it
So there
comes-
is water. There's water
And
up
there's already
there.
water.
Yeah,
Well, then I would say Sergeant Street is village. And we don't have that on village, right? Or no? What's that? Yeah. Isn't that Sergeant Street?
no, they're Lake Street maybe?
No, that is Sergeant Street.
That's Sergeant Street. It's right before the
Yeah,
bridge.
I mean, I guess that'd be the other thing. I personally, I think of the village as being all of Main Street,
All the way to the
Sergeant Street
bridge.
as well.
Yeah.
All the way to all the way to the bridge, except for the part that's on it's already appropriately blue.
Yeah. So I would put Sergeant Street right into the village too.
Well, and all of the Main Street.
Yeah,
that
and
is-
everything before it too.
Right. Yeah, what you're circling now would be the other suggestion of what is already part of the village.
And Brandy, you see that?
Okay. Yep, I can see it. Yep. So you want to go to the Canaan line and then come down to basically meet the lake.
Yeah, so we
Area.
talked
To the
about
bridge,
this
yeah.
area here.
Yep.
And then if you went back up here, Eric was describing Maple and May up here.
In
And
Andersonville.
then the Anderson Hill neighborhood is this area here.
I mean, I think you could make an argument for that entire stretch because, you know.
Cause it would be like if we're talking about sidewalks and things like that,
yeah,
like,
if you're talking
I
about,
mean,
you know,
trying to create complete streets, that's where, I mean, cause
Yeah,
that, like,
this-
from
this part
Anderson
here,
Hill
Bobby
down
Williams.
4 is
Yeah.
one of the most treacherous.
and
parts
certainly
to-
Bobby LaCroix, who owns one of those large parcels, has had, you know, thoughts and discussions about what would be more of a village type development on some of his properties.
Right.
Because we, you know, activity wise, I should say, usage wise.
Yeah, and that sort of segues into the purple area, area D, which
Right.
is the Route 4, which is the mixed, commercial upfront, and then residential, further away from Route 4.
Mhm.
So I see what people are saying in terms of expanding the orange,
The village.
as future.
Yeah.
Would make a lot more sense to have the village going that direction because of Route 4 and the water sewer lines already there versus going towards the southeast direction, past Lapan Circle, that little
Well, the sewer comes right up to
that
Mark Mills,
Copain look on the map.
right before my house.
Yeah, Westcott Road, going beyond Westcott Road,
Right.
just getting the sewer line there is gonna be ridiculously expensive.
That section seems very appropriate to me, that
Delineation.
whole
Right.
section.
Yeah, I think,
Both
if-
what exists now and what people have spoken about in the future.
right, well, if Brandy went by where the
Yeah.
water was, that, it goes
Yeah.
right up to the house right before mine.
Yeah.
So it goes to Mark Mills or Dr. Brown's
Yeah.
property.
Yeah,
So-
they have to build the bridge across again.
Yeah.
Can I ask a clarifying question? Was there a suggestion to change area D? The,
No.
no, leave that, but fill in Anderson Hill and all the way up.
Yeah.
There to Village. Yep, okay.
Yeah, so.
Just
pretty
making
much
sure I
your-
understand. It's
village
always hard to
extends-
describe visual things in words.
Your village extends all the way up to area D, to the purplish,
Mhm. Yep, okay.
and all the way to the bridge, town line,
Into the break.
and to the bridge.
Stay on the straight, don't go
Right,
into,
right.
because then
Yeah.
Yeah,
you get into steep slopes and everything else. and-
right. All
Okay.
right.
So there was one additional map that I sent Rob. This is not actually a land use map. It will be a map for the transportation chapter, which I know we looked at last time we met. But just if you throw it up quickly, yeah, village transportation.
Rob's getting Georgia.
Maybe. Nope,
You just blew it, Rob.
nope.
You jinxed me. Here we go.
Yeah, yeah.
Here we go, hold on a sec.
Yep, I think you're,
Well, at least playing with that, one of the, I don't know if Brandy got a chance to correct the road names that were on
Yep,
the big
I've
map.
got the road
Oh.
names, I think,
Yeah.
in the process of being fixed. So as I pull maps up and edit them, I'm changing out the road names. So this is the village detail transportation map for the transportation chapter. And the one reason I wanted to pull it up is that I have added up the parking spaces, and I'll check this back against, I think Rob, somewhere you sent me an email where you had a running total of parking spaces as well.
Yep.
But yeah, so there's a fair number of parking spaces. So I just thought you'd be
I think
interested
that'd
to
be
see
a
that.
quick trivia question. 164?
I counted 164. I was fairly conservative. If I was actually trying to park, I would be more aggressive about places I was willing to leave my vehicle. I look for things that look really appropriately marked for parking. Okay. Okay. So that's all I've got on maps. So that's your map update front.
Great. All right. You can stop sharing. We can see everybody, making sure they're still awake. Okay, so that's land use and economic development. We are gonna skip visioning, and here's why. Because it's me. No, I think that we got a lot of good comments on vision. And one that definitely I'm sitting with is that it was more aspirational than vision. There's some questions about vision statements. And I think that some things to dig into for another meeting, as well as for our community, our next community wide input session. There's definitely some wordsmithing, and as this is the opening piece to all of the master plan, I think there's a little bit more that we want to actually do and have a focused conversations and getting more feedback from the community. So I don't want to, we're getting close to our end time, and I don't want to tackle all that now. But I do want to talk about and move on to the next steps. And I should have actually added this in there. One of the things that, and this does go back to the edits and the focus groups. We had a lot of comments on the pictures. I think maybe I asked this in March and then I have forgotten to do it. And my thought was, oh no, or maybe I just said this at a select board meeting. I don't know. Instead of putting the onus on each group to find pictures, if we put out a community-wide call and have people submit pictures, I know they have to be very large format or large enough format.
Well, one of the things that we were gonna check was all of the calendar pictures.
Right, so with
So
Elisa,
there's a large resource there that someone needs to plow through.
yeah. All right,
And maybe that answers most of your your issues, but otherwise, I think it's a great idea to put it out to the town.
So you almost have to be sort of specific of, we want a
Right.
picture
Yeah,
of
that's what I always.
this, not
Right.
like, send us a picture of Enfield.
So let me do this. I'm gonna check with Elisa to see what she has. And then if we don't find some things that are satisfactory, then we decide what we want pictures of and we put out a call for those kind of thing. Okay, all right. So community-wide feedback session date/summer break. So our next steps, we have town meeting on,
Saturday.
Saturday. I guess I should be there. Put that on my calendar. Town meeting's on Saturday. David is going to Article 18, State of the End, y'all. Get up and give a quick update of where we're at and because that's all that there's space for and appropriate to do. So you're gonna do that. And we want to be able to start to foreshadow when we're gonna or what our timeline is. So we want to give Brandy the time she needs to just dig into, like getting stuff done. Cause I know like editing and going back and like sometimes like we just need some time and space to do work. We want to be able to present a product that we can get quality feedback from. And so giving the time to do that. And then also be able to take a break, or because there's still going to be more work to be done. And then hopefully have something done and polished in September for the planning board, and then definitely rotate off anybody that is completely done with this set of stuff. So that's kind of the bigger picture. Right? Did I get that all right? So what we're looking for are some ideas or some thoughts, and Brandy, like, definitely needs some help from you here. A community-wide feedback session where we can, and to me, I'm envisioning we'll do a little bit more like work on the vision and those guiding principles. I don't, we want to give people the chance to kind of read it, but I don't know if we want to get, I don't know. I'm a little nervous on getting a whole lot of thoughts or.
We've had at least 50 opportunities
Right.
for people to participate. We've gotten incredible feedback.
Mhm.
Honestly, to me, it feels like we're getting to the point where it's too much of a good thing. Like, it's time to
Right.
write. I mean, we've written the plan. I mean, we've got a
Right.
great draft. It's excellent. And it's, I mean, more feedback is better, but at some point you have to stop.
Right.
So you did have in the sort of broad scope of work, this idea of sort of a final workshop.
Yeah.
Once you've got the full draft. So I know you're asking me how much time I need. I'm also kind of trying to figure out how much time you need as well. So you're obviously going to want one more meeting to go through the vision. And then we should probably have a preparatory meeting, a committee meeting where we're mostly getting prepared for the public meeting. So that suggests to me that we need 2 more task force meetings prior to setting the community meeting, or to having the community meeting. Does that make sense to you?
Yes, that's what makes sense to me. How about anybody else?
So that'll get you through May.
That'll get us through May. We do a workshop early-ish June. We have one more meeting to debrief.
So you're envisioning the workshop, or whatever we're calling it, the last ditch review in like June?
Yeah.
And what do you see that looking like? Or is that the question?
I think so. That's some of the questions. I think David and I have 2 different ideas. He envisions a whole, well, you say what you envision, I'm not gonna
I
speak for
mean,
you.
but my idea for this final review before the official public hearings is that we have as near to a final, polished, grammatically correct, edited, formatted, linked, whatever else, version that we put up on the website. We get it, publicized in as many ways as possible. And basically, this is where we say to the community,
This is what we heard.
look this over,
Yeah.
this is what we heard. Come to this meeting on such and such a date, such and such a place. And I would like to see the meeting happen, maybe not in June, but maybe in July, because the people who are only here in the summer, and Brad, correct me if I'm wrong on this, probably don't come up until roughly
After Father's Day.
after Father's Day.
Yeah, after Black Flag season.
Right,
So we're talking mid-June then.
Yeah.
which is June 5th, yeah, 19th this year.
So, you know, I would like to see the,
Do you need that meeting and the hearings? Do you need both?
the hearing is a legal requirement.
Yeah.
My guess is that you're gonna get a lot better discussion and a lot freer discussion in a community meeting.
Yeah.
Than the 24 people who might show up for a warned public hearing.
Okay, so you publish as good as we can get it to the website, you advertise it, you publicize it, and then you say, any comments, come visit us on such and such a date, and it's an open forum.
Yeah,
Controlled, but an open.
controlled, but you know,
Open
people,
forum. Good luck.
people,
Good luck.
Right,
people get a chance to say, you know, what they need to say on it. Sure.
Yep.
How much,
Well-
how much editing would you be doing after the open forum? You know, if you get a lot of feedback and saying, change this, this, and this, are you really gonna be doing that?
Well, if we get a lot of little nitpicking things, the answer is probably not. If people say, well, you know,
But you can't-
our transportation problem, or not problem, our transportation chapter misses the entire point, then, you know, we're gonna have to go back and rethink it.
It's a good thought, however, you really can't change what we've already heard from the public in terms of all of the different opportunities plus the survey itself. You can't change it because one or two people say change it.
No, definitely not. But, you know, if you get to this point, this meeting, and my sense is that people have focused in on areas that they're interested in.
Yep.
And perhaps they haven't paid as much attention to,
So, I mean, it could be an explanatory thing. That someone could come and say, hey, I disagree with this, and then someone would have to say, well, we put this because of the survey or because.
Yeah.
but isn't that what the public hearings are?
I think the public hearing should be more of almost a rubber stamp formality type of thing, or at least I would like to get it to that point.
But we,
Sealy? Go ahead, Sealy.
Celia,
can I say something?
Celia, you're being recognized.
What about the rest of it? What about the rest of the master plan? Can't you hear me?
Yes,
Wait a minute.
so what about the rest of the master plan? You mean all the other chapters that we haven't gotten to yet?
Yes, is what I
Okay.
said. Yes,
That's the next step. We're
yes,
trying.
people should know about that.
Okay, yep. So I think that's the thing, like, this is not, when we say master plan, Rob puts it well, master
I'm gonna
planning,
lose you.
that we're not done, but we need to be done with these 5 chapters. And some of them will get slightly amended once we've added things, because
But
it'll,
it has to be like,
We can't hear you, Sealy.
okay. Mike, not, doing anything for me.
Hmm.
Anyway, I can't do it.
She must have a bad connection.
Steely, you might consider turning off your camera and just talking, because it could be that your bandwidth is so narrow that your video is taking up a lot of the stuff. Can you turn your camera off and then just talk?
She's frozen.
Yep, she appears to be frozen.
I think Brandy might have had a comment, and maybe we can have Brandy weigh in on all this and then come back to Sealy.
Yeah, I was going to comment on the question around what the difference is between having the final public meeting and then having the public hearings. I always encourage an informal meeting prior to the public hearing process. Once you sort of engage the public hearing process, you don't want to have surprises. You don't want to know that suddenly you have something that you have a significant number of people objecting to, because if you stop at that point and make changes, you then have to re-engage through the public hearing process. Whereas if you do the initial public meeting in a more informal way like that, you kind of know whether there are red flags or not, and you can sort of enter into the hearing process with a greater level of certainty about being able to complete it in one go.
so,
Steely has her hand up.
yep. I'm gonna, I want to ask a question to what Brandy's saying, so I see her hand. So then is it, how much time from an informal public hearing and feedback that way to a formal hearing would there typically be, or?
I mean, it depends on what you hear. If
Okay.
you don't need to go back in and make major changes, you just roll straight
Okay.
into the next step. If you need to have a reconsideration of some things, then you end up having to take a pause and do that. But
Okay. Steely. Whenever you can, Sealy.
I don't think she's there.
You could try to. Yeah, Pinninger's not gonna do anything. Okay,
She's muted. Look at the microphone icon.
see if you can unmute her.
Or maybe
There
that's
she
Brandy
is.
that's muted.
All right, Sealy, what's up?
No.
Bridget.
And she's just dropped out. Okay, so. Did you have a question?
No, I was gonna say one thing before we're done, but I'll do it last.
It sounds like that, all right, we've got April 30th, we've got this Saturday. And maybe we come back May 9th and do a little work on visioning. And maybe explore that a little bit deeper and just kind of looking at some of the comments that were there. And then I think if it's instead of doing a workshop, that what we would do for the public is an informal public hearing. And that would be at like the end of July,
Yeah, I
August.
mean,
Is that,
yeah. I
that's what it
mean,
sounds like it should be called versus a workshop where we're really, but that would give us lots of time to tidy the things up and give Brandy the time and space to do all those links, and then it might be ready by the end of the summer. And we do an informal public hearing, and that's that feedback session. And then, hopefully we've got it right and we can roll into present like a, and then that'll dictate what the next step is.
so are you saying we do this public meeting, workshop, whatever we're gonna call it, in late July?
I would hope late July or August, yeah, because I don't think that, like, right now, it's not in enough shape to like, if from what Erica said, what Brad has said, we have done surveys, we've done focus groups, we've done all of that kind of stuff. Now we need to just really like get to the point where it's really good to go, and I think that's gonna take that time. And
Can you hear me?
yes.
Just go
Yeah.
ahead. I can't, the computer's too iffy, so go right ahead. Forget about me. I was just worried about the next section of this, that the people are aware that come to that hearing for the first section, that there's another one.
Yeah.
You understand
that-
what I'm saying? Or
Yes. Yes.
that's
And
all.
that's like, after these chapters, then we start on the next ones. And by we, I mean those that are interested in still going, plus pulling in new people, especially if we're doing committees and commissions and pulling people in from those. But I say we do May 9th, we do visioning, and then we can but if we want to make an announcement, I would say late summer.
Yeah, I agree.
Does that, and it's an
You
informal
know,
hearing.
I think a lot of people might go out of town in August, so late July sits well with me.
Mhm.
But, I'm willing to look at, town calendars and see what, other events are going on that might compete with us or might help us too.
And if it's online, we can make sure that there's a way for people to submit feedback or whatever.
Yeah,
on
that
that.
too. Yeah. Kurt has something to say, I think.
Yes,
Yeah, I mean, I would call it something like the final draft presentation. And then when it comes to the public hearing, the formal public hearing, it's like, sorry, we've been through multiple things.
Right.
If you don't like it, we're not changing it.
The train's
Right.
left the station.
Yeah.
But I
It's
think
just
that-
Like David said, my public hearing is, we're done.
right, and that's where we're trying to
Yeah.
get to like satisfying, we're not surveying people more, we're not like we have the information, but making sure that, I mean, I'm confident that we do. If we've really missed the mark, that'll come out in the final draft presentation, but we need a significant amount of time to get that done.
Yeah.
And with all hyperlinks, citations, et cetera. So I think at town meeting, we can say, look for late July, early August.
Mhm.
We don't have to be specific at that moment. And then also reference that these 5 chapters, then we'll be starting on the next ones, the next, and hopefully somewhere in there, we'll do another round of,
And probably
Pulling interest.
announce as soon as we can what the next chapters are, right, so people get it and know it.
Yeah, I mean, that's gonna be built into the document that we produce
right.
anyhow.
right.
Makes
But
sense.
yeah, that's something that will be, announced at town meeting if there's
And
anybody who doesn't have frostbite by the time we talk about
it's
this.
gonna be a beautiful day. Don't even.
Thunderstorms.
Don't.
I'm
You and you.
I'm just trying to be
Listen.
realistic.
I've had it with outside meetings myself, but,
I didn't put my winter parka and my long underwear away yet.
okay, does that sound, so we're definitely meeting May 9th, and then hopefully we're gonna be able to take a good, long summer break for those of us that can continue on. But I do believe that this is Eric's last meeting with us.
Yes, as everyone knows that town meeting is on Saturday, and I'm sure everyone will be there. Following town meeting is when I'll be sworn in to join the select board. And at that point, I drop off of the other committees and boards that I'm part of. So yeah, so this will be my last meeting as part of this group. So thank you to everyone. It's been great.
Thank you.
Thank
I
you.
should have brought you snacks, but I didn't.
No, it's okay. We've got an excellent draft. I mean that when I say that, like this whole process has been really good and we're moving in a very good direction. So I'm happy that I was able to be a part of it and I appreciate all the time everybody here has put into it.
Thank you.
And we appreciate your input and the fact that you've gone on to join the select board.
Thank you.
Yeah, don't hammer us then if I'm gonna be like, you wrote it. All right. Whew, a little late. Any other comments from the public?
No, I'm good.
Any other comments from the select board, or select board, the task force? Can I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Great. And that's it. Thank you all very much. If
Thank
anybody, if there's an extra pair of hands or two, I've got a bunch of stuff in my car that has to go somewhere.
I'll help you.